I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted... Let me cough real quick. Let me restart that.
No, we started.
It's on.
Yep, here we go. Debria, do not cut that.
I have a lung infection. Leave me alone. Anyways.
Oh, God. All right, I'll go ahead and start it up.
Game worse.
Oh,
what
God.
up?
That's how we're starting?
Oh, God.
This is harder than it looks. Oh, God.
What's your name?
Billy Bob Thornton.
That's where you went? You went with Billy Bob Thornton?
I don't know where I'm going. And then this is Chris.
You're JT Timmons.
Oh, yeah, that.
What's the name of the show?
You got it?
Yeah.
Huh?
What's the name of the show?
What's the name of the show? He did not want to be on camera, y'all. We forced him to become a part of the on-face personalities.
Yes.
Okay. Anyways, hello. Welcome back. So today we are going to talk about the Villisca Axe Murder. You have asked, and we have answered.
Yes, we have received many comment and message asking us to cover
From our
this one.
Midwestern listeners.
Yes. Hello.
Huh?
Is that your Midwestern accent?
Yeah.
Oh,
Isn't it? I don't think Canadian.
You betcha.
You betcha?
You betcha.
Yeah, it's like
That might be a little more
Canada fusion, right?
West. This is Iowa, right?
Yeah.
That's Midwest.
It's Iowa.
Yeah, it's very Midwest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For all the Midwesterner listeners,
betcha.
Midwest emo is one of my favorite genres. So good job on that.
Yes. Cool.
I'm not even sure what that is.
You said what?
I don't even know what that is.
Midwest emo?
I don't know what Midwest emo is.
It's
It's
okay.
like
Hold
emo
on.
music, but like
Hold on.
I don't know. It's like cornfield emo.
It's all. It's like bands who play in Denny's, unironically.
Yeah. You never seen the ditties?
Hold on.
No, I don't.
What the F is up, Denny's?
Nope. Got nothing.
Hold on.
It's
I'm an uncultured cow.
Oh,
I don't
my
know
Lord.
what is going on.
Hold on. And that band, to give them credit, is called Live Without.
Live Without.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, okay. Live Without.
And that
Live
video
Without.
has 1.3 million views.
Yes.
As well it should.
Yes.
It is the greatest thing that has ever happened in a Denny's outside of the Rudy Tooty Fresh and Fruity. No, that's IHOP. Never mind.
Yes.
Nothing good happens at
No,
Denny's.
the Grand Slam is
That's
what
it, the
they
Grand
have.
Slam. The Grand
Yeah.
Slam.
Yeah.
Actually, Denny's used to do the Hobbit hole. They had like Hobbit during. I'm guessing it was when the Hobbit was released. They had these meals where they do. If you're familiar with Egg in the Basket, it's where you take a piece of bread and you cut a hole and you put it in. But they called it the Hobbit hole. Very good, actually. I enjoyed the Hobbit breakfast
See, okay, listen.
and 11 Z's.
I don't.
We are niche.
I don't eat eggs, but I would beg for them to make a Hobbit door pancake.
Oh, yeah, see, there you go.
Denny's, if I have any reach to you, please make me a Hobbit door pancake.
Although a Hobbit door is just a round door, so any pancake could be a Hobbit door pancake.
Well, no, you got to decorate it. Like I want.
She wants to decorate it.
Fancy.
I want.
She wants it to be fancy. Well, just ask for syrup and
Yeah, well, yeah. So I want these underpaid employees to draw door lines and a handle on my pancake.
Oh my Lord!
Oh, when did we turn into a comedy show, y'all?
I don't know, but I honestly, because we're about to talk about a really gruesome axe murder.
Yeah, let's talk about axe murder.
Okay, but listen, Villisca, Iowa. They're a dark town because they love this story. Like it is on their official town's website.
Yeah,
And that is
you know the band Modern Baseball.
No.
That's Midwest name.
Midwest
anyway,
emo.
just
Apparently,
look
I
up
don't know
modern
anything
baseball.
about Midwestern music.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a thing.
Oh, it's a thing.
It's
I
such
didn't
a thing,
know
and it's a
it was-
vibe too, man.
It is. It's a little
It's just
trash.
like- yeah, it's
a
like
little trash.
what you listen to after you leave, the Nebraska football game, and it's just like.
Do you go to Nebraska football games often?
No, but
you
he
know, it's
understands the vibe.
man. It's party in a cornfield vibe. That's what it is. It's party,
Yeah.
late night. It's like you're 19, got your whole life ahead of you. Maybe.
Got a tailgate.
Yeah.
And
It's good stuff,
in a
man.
cornfield.
God, it's good music. Anyway,
And
On
a
to Axe
Denny's.
Murders.
On
Axe
to Axe
Murders.
Murders. So, the Villisca Axe Murder. Axe Murder. 2 adults and 6 children were found brutally murdered in their beds in the small Midwestern town of Villisca, Iowa.
oh,
They were telling Lizzie Borden to hold my beer.
Actually, Lizzie
know.
Borden's website wrote about this as well.
Well, it's got to be. It's like within 20 years. 20 years? 10 years?
Yes.
10 years? It was like the
time is an
1890s
illusion.
and 1910s.
this is
when was this?
yeah.
This would
Because
happen.
this is the 1900s, right?
This
1910,
is
1912?
1912.
Yeah.
1912. So you just cut right to it.
Yeah.
I guess what it is.
Yeah.
It's like okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, start over. I wasn't focused. I was
Okay.
thinking about modern
Did you-
baseball.
okay.
Okay.
It's a good band.
For those of you who also were not listening to me,
Thinking of Midwestern rock.
yeah, who were pausing the podcast to go play a song by Midwestern.
Yeah. The drummer sings. Anyway, let's go.
Great. Anyways,
So cool.
2 adults and 6 children were found brutally murdered in their beds in the small Midwestern town of Villisca, Iowa. During the weeks that followed, life in that small town changed drastically. As residents of this small town reinforced locks, openly carried weapons, and huddled together while sleeping, newspaper reporters and private detectives flooded the streets. Accusations, rumors, and suspicions ran rampant among friends and families. Bloodhounds were brought in. Law enforcement agencies from neighboring counties and states joined forces. Hundreds of interviews filled thousands of pages, and yet the murders remained unsolved and the murderer unpunished. And we'll get into it. So, in 1994, Darwin and Martha Lynn of Corning, Iowa, purchased the former home of the murder victim J.B. Moore and his family. The house was returned to its original condition at the time of the murders of June 10th, 1912. It was listed on the National Register of Historic Places and open for tours. Films and books on the murders have recently captured the interest of an audience who have never heard of this horrendous crime. Psychics claim they've identified the murderer, and history buffs continue collecting piles of documents that say point to the truth. In all honesty, though, we will never really know what happened on that dark night inside the home of J.B. and Sarah Moore. The murderer or murderers were never caught, and given the many years that have passed, their dark secret has obviously carried with them to their own graves. For some, the speculation was almost too much to bear, and in 1912, townspeople began to distinguish and identify themselves by who they believed committed the crime.
Oh.
Friendships became strained and in many cases irretrievably broken. The town stood then, in many cases, and still stand divided. Many people have visited the home and read newspaper articles of 1912 that poured over the grand jury testimonies and the coroner's inquest. Multiple people have spent hours looking into the eyes of the victims and the tattered photographs that remain, but no one has been able to come to a consensus of what happened in Villisca in 1912. So, the pain is unknown, the pain of a terrible tragedy that forced neighbors to look with suspicion upon neighbors, the pain of the 20th century. Originally, the construction of the website where I got this, which is VilliscaAxeMurders.com. Again,
Straight to the source.
Straight to the source. It was simply a favor to a friend. Over the past several years, however, it has become a way of life. The Moores have become family, and once you've entered this site and been drawn into this story, they can guarantee it has become a part of your life. So, let's get into everything.
That sounds like a curse.
I know.
I
Right?
know.
Gracious. Is this owned by this site owned by the city?
No.
Okay.
This is
private.
somebody who just likes this story a lot.
Heard that.
So Lena and Ina Stillinger, the daughters of Joseph and Sarah Stillinger, left their home for church early Sunday morning. They planned on having dinner with their grandmother after morning service, spending the afternoon with her, and then returning to the home to spend the night after the Children's Day exercises concluded. The girls, however, were invited by Catherine Moore to spend the night at the Moore home instead. Prior to leaving for the exercises, Mr. Moore placed a call to the Stillinger home to ask permission for the girls to stay overnight. Blanche, Lena, and Ina's older sister told Mr. Moore that her parents were both outdoors, but she would pass the message along to them. The Children's Day program at the Presbyterian Church was an annual event and began at approximately 8 p.m. on Sunday evening, June 9th. According to witnesses, Sarah Moore coordinated the exercises. All the Moore children, as well as the Stillinger girls, participated. Josiah Moore sat in the congregation. The program ended at 9:30 p.m., and the Moore family, along with the Stillinger sisters, walked home from the church. They entered their home sometime between 9:45 and 10 p.m. The next morning, at approximately 5 a.m., Mary Peckham, the Moore's next-door neighbor, stepped into her yard to hang laundry. At approximately 7 a.m., she realized that not only had the Moores not been outside nor the chores began, but that the house itself seemed unusually still. Between 7 and 8 a.m., Mary Peckham approached the home and knocked on the door. A concerned neighbor. I mean, honestly, that's probably a good thing that you have neighbors that are that invested in your daily routines, I guess. But
Well, you figure that at the time, what else was there? Really?
Right.
It wasn't an iPhone.
And if it was, and if something was out of the ordinary, you would almost immediately know, oh, geez, I would have seen so-and-so by now. I would have seen,
Right.
I would have heard something
So, when she received no response, she attempted to open the door only to find it locked from the inside. After letting out the Moore's chickens, Mary placed a call to Josiah's brother, Ross Moore, setting into place one of the most mismanaged murder investigations to ever be undertaken.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That's saying a lot.
I know. The crime. Based on the testimonies of Mary Peckham and those who saw the Moores at the Children's Day exercise, it is believed that sometime between midnight and 5 a.m., an unknown assailant entered the home of J.B. Moore and brutally murdered all occupants of the house with an axe. So the
I
victim.
don't really hear axe murderers as much as
Right.
back in the day.
I know. Well, because it's a lot more hands-on of a murder.
It really is.
You know, it's
You have to really hate.
yeah.
Well, I mean, you do hear is like brutal stabbings and things like that, but an axe,
An axe, yeah.
it's true.
I guess there was a time when axes were more prevalent too.
I guess,
people
but
were always chopping wood or.
so
It's like if it an axe murder versus a knife murder though. It's like what's more brutal? I mean,
axe.
yeah, but an axe is going to kill way quicker.
The brutality of an axe, the suffering of the knife.
Of the knife, yeah.
yeah.
It's
because
like-
it's brutal in its execution.
Sure.
But and a lot of people survive knife attacks.
It's true.
I think that a person that murders a family like this with an axe is trying to get a job done versus someone would come in
or
with
they have
like
such rage.
Right.
They have rage.
Rage.
Either they have
Yeah.
rage or trying to get a job done, all of that. And then you have the person, if they came in with a knife and stabbed them all to death, it'd be more, I guess,
Intimate.
yeah,
Well,
in a way.
Well, with stabbing, you got to be a little bit more precise, right? Like because you got to hit the right organs. With
You got to
axes,
do it more. You got to do it more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots more stabs.
with axes, you can slit a throat easily, cut that. Or, you can hit more organs with one fell
Well,
swoop.
and just hitting
so
a person in the head with an axe.
In the head,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it's over.
Exactly.
Can end
But
it
that's
pretty
what
quickly.
if you think about the most famous axe murder song. Yes, this is America. We have an axe murder song of Lizzie Borden.
sure, of course.
You talk about how many times she swung.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like you don't even need that many.
That's why they believe that
overkill.
These people were dead within 2 hits.
Yeah.
Because it was the head. You know,
Right.
Exactly.
If you continually hit somebody in the head with an axe,
It's even more rage.
yeah, you're
Exactly.
obviously exhibiting some kind of passion that is.
You're getting into knife territory.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, upon arriving at the home of his brother, Ross Moore attempted to look in a bedroom window and then knocked on the door and shouted, attempting to raise someone inside the house. When that failed, he produced his keys and found one that opened the door. Although Miss Peckham followed him onto the porch, she did not enter the parlor. Ross went no further than the room off the parlor. When he opened the bedroom door, he saw 2 bodies on the bed and dark stains on the bedcloths. He returned immediately to the porch and told Miss Peckham to call the sheriff. The 2 bodies in the room downstairs were Lena Stillinger, age 12, and her sister Ina, age 8, house guests of the Moore children. The remaining members of the Moore family were found in the upstairs bedrooms by City Marshal Hank Horton, who arrived shortly. So he found them. Every person in the house had been brutally murdered, their skulls crushed as they slept. Josiah Moore, age 43, Sarah Montgomery Moore, age 39, Herman Moore, age 11, Catherine Moore, age 9, Boyd Moore, 7, and Paul Moore, 5, as well as the Stillinger sisters.
Oh, dude.
So dark.
Super dark.
That's a mass murder.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and this was at a time before mass murders were really a thing, so you got to really work hard to do it.
It's fascinating because we refer to these as axe murders, but mass murder is almost more fitting, because that's a lot of death.
Do you know why this person used an axe? Obviously, he was trying to get a job done. You know why he used an axe?
Why?
Gunshots too loud.
All right, wake up everybody else.
Wake up
Right.
everybody.
Well,
There's
you
too
wouldn't
many
be
people
able-
to kill.
Yeah.
That person went in there wanting to kill every single person in the house, no matter who they were. or
Well,
what
and like I was saying earlier,
age.
and this is true of the Lizzie Borden case as well, is an axe was a weapon of convenience. A lot of times people will leave them sitting outside where they chop the wood.
Yeah.
You're going to approach the house and there's an axe like right there to grab and pick up. So it's definitely one of those things where if the axe if there's a guy walking around with an axe, he's looking for trouble,
Right.
But if it's really just a case of mania that just consumes someone, walking up to a house, you could easily find an axe and an axe almost, in that dark mindset is like, I can get them all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So once the murderers were discovered, the news traveled quickly in the small town. As neighbors and curious onlookers converged at the house, rubbernecking has never stopped. So
Oh, no.
law enforcement officials quickly lost control of the crime scene. It is said that up to 100 people traipsed through the house, gawking at the bodies.
Oh no! Oh my God!
That is a grossly mismanaged
Yes, absolutely.
crime scene. Oh my lord!
Yeah, I was thinking that the Lizzie Borden
Yeah.
crime scene was really poorly managed.
Goodness gracious! What is this? The Moselle murders?
Right. Well, even then they didn't have like hundreds of people come.
They had a bunch of people walk through the house there. Remember?
Right.
Yeah. But anyway.
But anyways, so it was said that up to 100 people traipsed through the house, gawking at the bodies before the Villisca National Guard finally arrived around noon to cordon off the area and secure the home.
They had to call the National Guard.
I know.
To secure a crime scene.
Dude.
Goodness
And
gracious.
how gruesome. Can you imagine? Because this is not just seeing a murder scene, which is unfathomably dark. These are people you probably knew.
Right.
You know, these are neighbors who are now looking at children that they've seen playing on the street.
Right.
I would want to think that in even my darkest moods, I could never bring myself to go look at.
I would never do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd never do it. Madison and I just had a conversation about that because she rubbernecks and I don't. I look away from the body on the street, the motorcycle accident. I look away from that so fast. I hate it. I don't want to look at it. And she's just like,
I'm
what
sick.
that?
I'm sick.
Well, you have a different relationship with the dead.
I do.
Than we do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
she'll
true.
probably say hi to him.
Right.
Yeah.
He's standing there. It's like, you're dead.
You're dead.
Got it.
Cool. Sounds good. Right. But yeah, no. But the real blood and gore don't really bother me. I don't know why. But yeah. Anyways, so but I wouldn't go traipsing to go see a chopped up child. Like that's a line for me, I think.
Again, we talk about the time. Yeah. It would be very. You'd be hard pressed to understand what it must be like, to hear this news and be like, no, and all that involuntary. I have to see it for myself kind of concept.
Yeah. Sure.
I could see that propelling people.
But also, people have always been morbid.
Yeah, we're morbid. I mean, we're morbid folk.
Well, think about it, like in the Victorian era, when in London, where they would take people that they couldn't identify and put them in the windows of the morgue and be like, do you know this person? And most people didn't know the person, but they came to see the body.
In the Wild West, when they would shoot outlaws, they would actually prop them up in their coffins and have their wanted posters and things, so people could go by and be like, oh, they caught him. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Yo. Humanity is sick, so don't be judging me for my rubbernecking.
No one's judging you. No, I'm just stating a fact.
I'm a little judging.
I'm just stating a fact, and anyone listening to this podcast has a little bit of morbid in them.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, that's fair.
So, anywho, the only known facts regarding the scene of the crime were 8 people had been bludgeoned to death, presumably with an axe left at the crime scene. It appeared all had been asleep at the time of the murders. Doctors estimated time of death as somewhere shortly after midnight. Curtains were drawn on all of the windows in the house except for 2, which did not have curtains. Those windows were covered with clothing belonging to the Moors. All the victims' faces were covered with the bedcloths after they were killed. Interesting.
There was actually a mass murder in a house in Utah. Remember I told you about that a couple weeks ago. Did you hear about that? Guy
guy just lost it.
Went in and just killed his entire family in Utah.
Oh, you know what? I think I did hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty national news. And so, that, and he covered the body. He covered the bodies, and I'm just like, what is it about covering bodies after brutally murdering them? Like, is there just something that makes the murderer want to cover a body? I mean,
weren't the people in Utah, weren't they Mormon? I'm pretty sure they were Mormon.
I don't know.
Because I could see deeply religious people doing that.
No. I also think that covering your act, knowing what you've done, the idea of showing respect in that sort of weird way.
That's really weird.
Because I think, like homicidal mania.
Yeah.
The concept of homicidal mania, the mania part is being out of control.
Sure.
And when the act is done, I think it's followed usually by shame. Because it is a highly shameful act, because when you think of this story, he covered the windows with their clothing. He was trying to keep the outside world out as much as possible. He was trying to hide what he had done. And I'm saying it could have been a she, but working on just the idea of being driven to do something and then thinking about what you did.
Yeah.
Oh,
100%.
So, a kerosene lamp was found at the foot of the bed of Josiah and Sarah. The chimney was off and the wick had been turned back. The chimney was found under the dresser. So I'm guessing they had like a little portable chimney or like portable fireplace or something like that.
Or are they talking about parts of the lantern?
I don't know.
Because the wick of the lantern turned all the way down. Is that what they're saying? The wick was turned all the way down?
I guess, yeah.
Because the chimney might be the stack.
Oh, that would make sense. Okay. So a similar lamp was found at the foot of the bed of the Stillinger girls, and the chimney was also off. So, yep, they are talking about the lantern. And the axe was found in the room occupied by the Stillinger girls. So they must have been the last.
The last, right.
It was bloody, but an attempt had been made to wipe it off. The axe belonged to Josiah Moore. So you were right. They probably were walking by and were like, oh, an axe. Yeah. Great. The ceilings in the parents' bedroom and the children's room showed gouge marks apparently made by the upswing of the axe.
Wow.
Well, because honestly, just the act of hitting one person would wake up the next person. So you'd have to move fast and furious to make sure like the gunshot theory. It's like if you hit one person, the other person wakes up and screams.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get it.
Yeah, you're moving quick.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just I'm trying to figure out, and I'm sure you're going to talk more about this, but if it's Josiah's axe, how's someone just going to walk up with any intent to kill everyone in the house without any
it's a small
weapon
town
to do it?
It's a small town. They probably everybody probably has.
But
an
you're
axe
also thinking
outside.
of crimes of passion, crimes of opportunity. The notion striking a person right then and there. Literally like, I'm going to kill them. Or maybe that wasn't even the original intent.
But how could that transit? That's a massive transition from not even necessarily, planning on killing them to seeing the axe and going like, I'm going to do it. Like that's such a big switch.
Here's the thing though.
That's
mania. They probably knew that they had an axe that they left outside, probably on like a stump where they cut their firewood or whatever.
Okay.
And they didn't want to use their own axe because then it could be traced back to them.
Maybe.
So if it was Josiah's axe, they don't know who.
So they knew the murder weapon was there when they had the intent to go do it.
Yeah, and keep in mind that there are other just as easy to implement weapons that you probably could have found. A shovel will do in an instant. They're probably scythes, used to cut the grass or the wheat, and so yeah, it's icky. But I bet if we continue, we'll at least hear the theories of action.
Right.
Cool.
And so a piece of a keychain was found on the floor in the downstairs bedroom. A pan of bloody water was discovered on the kitchen table, as well as a plate of uneaten food. The doors were all locked. The bodies of Lena and Ina Stillinger were found in the downstairs bedroom off the parlor. Ina was sleeping closest to the wall, and Lena was on her right side. A gray coat covered her face. Lena, according to the inquest testimony of Dr. F.S. Williams, lay as though she kicked out one foot out of her bed sideways with one hand up under the pillow on her right side, half sideways, not clear over, but just a little. Apparently, she had been struck in the head and squirmed down in the bed, perhaps 1/3 of the way. Lena's nightgown was slid up and she was wearing no undergarments. There was a blood stain on the inside of her right knee and what the doctors assumed was a defensive wound on her arm. Dr. Lindquist, the coroner, reported a slab of bacon on the floor in the downstairs bedroom lying near the axe, weighing nearly 2 pounds. It was wrapped in what he thought may be a dish towel. A second slab of bacon was about the size of about that size was found in the ice box. Lindquist also made a note of one of Sarah's shoes, which he found on Josiah's side of the bed. The shoe was found on its side, however, it had blood inside as well as under it. It was Lindquist's assumption that the shoe had been upright when Josiah was first struck and that blood ran off the bed into the shoe. He believed the killer later returned to the bed to inflict additional blows and subsequently knocked the shoe over. Had these murders been committed today, it is almost certain that law enforcement officials would have easily solved the crime and brought the murderer to justice. Almost 100 years later, however, the Villisca Axe Murders remain a mystery. The murderer or murderers are probably long dead, their gruesome secret buried with them. In hindsight, it's easy to blame the officials at the time for what could have been considered a gross mismanagement of what little evidence may have remained. It is important, however, that we also realize that in 1912, fingerprinting was a fairly new venture and DNA testing unimaginable. Although a local druggist had the forethought to attempt to enter the crime scene with his camera, he was promptly thrown out. It is quite probable that even if the crime scene had been secure, the evidence would not have provided any real clues. There was no central database of fingerprints, no central database of anything that had been recovered. The murderer would have had to have been apprehended for a comparison. Granted, prints may have either convicted or cleared Kelly and Mansfield, Kelly and Mansfield, I think is what they meant. Frank Jones, however, was suspected only of masterminding the plot, not actually committing the murders himself. Fingerprints would not have exonerated him. So,
well, there you have it, folks.
Basically, they don't know. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that...
were there people arrested?
No.
So there was just
Wait,
nothing?
who were those last two people?
That's a great question.
They just said that he was suspected of.
Hold it.
But
because now I want to know why he was suspected of masterminding it. What benefit would there have been? Because now that the story is that there's large swaths of bacon.
Yeah,
you almost think that it was a type of house robbery or something of that effect. I
don't know.
That's dark.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, with when they're they're just like when I heard that they were suspected, I just thought that was it. They were just suspected, and it's done. Like they just didn't. There was no arrest made.
That's what I got the impression
That's what
of.
I got. Now everyone's Googling.
Okay.
For those of you who can't see.
Yes. All right. So.
5 minutes later.
All right. So back onto the VilliscaIowa.com,
Okay.
Which is where this article came from.
Yep.
Basically, state senator topped the list. This is their suspects.
Okay.
So,
all right. We have a list of suspects, Chris.
While no one was ever convicted of the Villisca Axe murders, there seemed to be no shortage of suspects. In the days following the crimes, you could have read about at least 4 possibilities in any edition of the newspapers. Many of the leads, however, were quickly exhausted, and as time wore on, they began to dwindle. Today, historians and those who have studied the Axe murders extensively seem to have made up 3 camps. For more information regarding the suspects, you can check out Villisca, Iowa. There are many who believe Frank F. Jones, a prominent Villisca resident and Iowa state senator, was responsible for the brutal deaths of the Moores and the Stillinger children. Others admittedly insist that the crazed Reverend George Kelly was the culprit. Still others believe the Moore murders were the work of someone totally unrelated to the town of Villisca and possibly a traveler, hobo, or serial killer. Josiah Moore worked for Frank Jones at the Jones store for several years until he opened his own implement company in 1908. According to Villisca residents, Jones was extremely upset that Moore had left his employ and managed to take the very lucrative John Deere franchise with him.
Oh,
that might be reason enough to kill.
Monetarily motivated.
Mm-hmm. Now, rumor was that Moore had an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law, Donna, which further fanned the flames.
Okay.
Detective Wilkerson of the Burns Detective Agency openly accused Frank and his son Albert of hiring William Mansfield to kill Joe Moore. Neither Jones was ever arrested, and both denied vehemently any connection to the murders. Another person was William Blackie Mansfield, who was arrested in 1916, by the way.
Okay.
So...
Arrested for this in 1916?
Yes.
Okay.
So William...
He was one that they thought was hired, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you're reading the
I'm
same
reading the same
article. So when William Mansfield of Blue Island, Iowa, was the prime suspect of the Burns Detective Agency of Kansas City, and Detective James Newton Wilkerson. According to the Wilkerson investigation, the murder of Joe Moore and the other occupants of the Moore home were committed by Mansfield, who was in turn hired by F.F. Jones. Mansfield was also known as George Worley or Jack Turnbaugh. According to Wilkerson, Mansfield was a cocaine fiend and serial killer.
Okay.
That's some pretty intense accusations, but Wilkerson also believed that Mansfield was responsible for the axe murder of his wife and infant child,
what?
Father-in-law and mother-in-law in Blue Island, Illinois.
Yo!
That sounds pretty possible.
That's so on the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
There's one more that's fascinating.
Yes.
Keep going.
On July 5th, 1914, 2 years after the Villisca murders.
Yeah.
And the Axe murders committed in Paola, Kansas, 4 days before the Villisca murders, and the murders of Jenny Peterson and Jenny Miller in Aurora, Colorado.
What? Okay. So there's a bunch of axe murders around this.
Mm-hmm. According to the Wilkerson's investigation, all of the murders were committed in precisely the same manner, indicating the same man committed them. Wilkerson stated that he could prove that Mansfield was present in each of these places on the night of the murders.
Oh, wow.
In each murder, the victims were hacked to death with an axe, and the mirrors in the home were covered. A burning lamp with the chimney off and left at the foot of the bed, and basin in which the murderer washed was found in the kitchen. In each case, the murderer avoided leaving fingerprints by wearing gloves, which Wilkerson believed was strong evidence that the man was Mansfield, who knew his fingerprints were on file at the federal military prison at Leavenworth.
Okay.
Wilkerson managed to convince a grand jury to open an investigation in 1916, and Mansfield was arrested and brought to Montgomery County from Kansas City. Payroll records, however, provided an alibi that placed Mansfield in Illinois at the time of the Villisca murders. He was released for a lack of evidence and later won a lawsuit he brought against Wilkerson and was awarded $2,225.
Wow.
Wilkerson believed that pressure from Jones resulted not only in Mansfield's release, but also in the subsequent arrest and trial of Reverend Kelly. So.
Okay.
Hold on. We've got more.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Red Oak, Iowa, July 15, 1916, the Montgomery grand jury got down to business here today, examining the evidence against William Mansfield, brought here from Kansas City, Kansas, charged with the Villisca Axe murder 4 years ago. It is expected that there is enough evidence to keep the jury busy till Friday, when Mansfield will have his preliminary hearing and be defended by his Kansas City attorney. Now, Reverend George Jacqueline Kelly was arrested in 1917. The other prime suspect in the Axe murders was Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher. Kelly and his wife settled in Macedonia, Iowa, in 1912 after several years of preaching throughout the Midwest. In 1917, Kelly was arrested and charged with the murder of one of the victims of the Villisca Axe murder. Kelly was invited to attend the Children's Day exercises at the Presbyterian Church on June 9th of 1912. His presence in Villisca on the night of the murders and his subsequent departure in the early morning hours of June 10th made him a prime suspect in the case. Kelly's supposed confession made a mockery of law enforcement practices at the time and was withdrawn before his trial began. Kelly's first trial resulted in a hung jury, and he was finally acquitted by the second. According to information presented by Kelly and Tammy Rundle, Kelly moved to Kansas City, Connecticut, and finally New York City. The remaining years of his life and his final resting place remain a mystery.
Wow.
Then the next one is Henry Lee Moore.
This one's interesting.
Okay.
So this is the guy who came to unlock the doors. He had a key to the house.
Okay,
and remember, all the doors were locked. So that leads you to think that it was somebody who had a key.
This isn't him.
Oh, it's not?
This is a serial killer.
Ooh.
A straight up serial killer with 25 axe murders leveled at him.
Ooh, okay.
And all of them families.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so anyways.
How do you know that, though?
Because he's reading
I'm
the same
reading
article as I'm reading.
Okay.
Anyway, so there existed a strong possibility that a serial killer was actually at work, and Wilkerson's case against Mansfield actually suggested the same. M.W. McClary, excuse me, a federal officer assigned to the Villisca case, actually announced in May of 1913 that he had solved not only the Villisca murders, but 22 others that had been committed to the Midwest around the same time frame. McClary's theory was that Henry Moore, no relation to Josiah Moore, was the serial killer responsible for all of the crimes.
The last names being said.
I know, right?
Okay.
So Henry Moore was actually convicted of the murders of his mother and maternal grandmother in Columbia, Missouri, just months after the murders in Villisca. Moore's family members were killed just as brutally as the victims in Villisca, and his weapon of choice was an axe.
Okay.
Henry Lee Moore was born November 1st, 1874 in Boone County, Missouri. He was the eldest son of Enoch and Georgia Ann Wilson Moore. There were 3 other sons born of the couple. Henry's father was a farmer and served in the Civil War. His mother was a nurse. 2 of Henry's brothers, Tilden and Turner Moore, as well as his father, passed away before 1910. Henry's remaining brother, Charles, died in 1960 in Stockton, California. Charles left the area prior to the deaths of his mother and grandmother and did not return for the trial. It was unknown whether or not that he was aware of the situation. In 1900, Henry was living with a family in Franklin County, Iowa, and was working as a farmhand. It is suspected that Henry may have fathered a child with the young daughter of the farmer. Henry was sentenced to the Kansas State Reformatory in Hutchinson, Kansas on a forgery charge and was released on April 11, 1911. The murders in Colorado Springs occurred in September of the same year. Testimony during Henry's trial indicated that he had lived with his mother and grandmother during the winter of 1911 and the summer of 1912. He left to take a job on the railroad. Henry Lee Moore served 36 years of a life sentence before being paroled by the governor of Missouri on December 2nd, 1949. The governor commuted his sentence on July 30th, 1956. Henry Moore was 82 years old and had been living at the Salvation Army Center in St. Louis. It is unknown when he died or where he was living at the time. During the Villisca investigation, other axe murders were also coming to light. Just 9 months before the crime in Villisca, H.C. Wayne, his wife and child, and Miss A.J. Burnham, and her 2 children were bludgeoned with an axe in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
A month later, in October of 1911, a family was killed in Monmouth, Illinois, and just a week later, 5 members of a family in Ellsworth, Kansas, were murdered as they slept. Just a week before the killing of the Moores and Stillingers in Villisca, a man and his wife were killed in Powell, Kansas. The similarities in the crime were striking. McClary received information about Moore's conviction from his father, who was the warden of the Leavenworth, Kansas Federal Penitentiary. It was his belief that Mr. Henry Moore had committed all of the murders for whatever reason. McClary's announcement was largely ignored, and to our knowledge, Henry Moore was not convicted of any of the other crimes. Colorado Springs, Colorado, June 15, 1912, the police officials who were in constant touch with the Villisca authorities find added parallels in the Moores and Burnham Wayne murders, which are difficult to explain by the theory that the same person or persons committed both crimes. In Villisca, the murderer strung skirts and aprons across the windows to prevent anyone from looking into the house. At the Wayne and Burnham homes, bedspreads were stretched across the windows.
Sounds like the same person, yeah.
Right. In Villisca, he covered the heads of the victims with bed clothing, wiped the blood and from his axe and removed the stains from his hands and clothing. And this, too, was the case here. Here, as in the Iowa town, the doors were locked and unfastened rear window in each instance, affording a means of entrance for the axeman.
Okay.
Now,
and with the Henry Moore, because the evidence was loose and they couldn't really pin it, but Joseph Stillinger, the father of the girls who were visiting the Moore family, he claimed that Moore, the suspected serial killer, very much resembled a man that worked for him. Oh. And that man, given his name as Helm,
Pelham.
Yes. And he was hired in April of 1912 and only worked a week before disappearing.
Ooh.
So Sillinger still was like, I believe this man might be the man who I hired him. However, when Sillinger went to confront Moore in prison, there's no real news about it, but they're figuring that he got face to face with this person and was like, "Oh, this isn't him." Yeah. But it's tricky. I mean, the many victims. Fascinating that there are so many victims, and the fascinating that there was an axe killing spree.
I think
going on. And keep in mind, this is in the wake of Lizzie Borden.
Sure.
Right.
You know, we're talking like about 10 years after Lizzie Borden, there is a rash of brutal family murders with axes.
Yeah.
You know, and Lizzie Borden was national news. I mean, there wasn't anyone in the country who wasn't at least seeing the Lizzie Borden case as it was playing out.
Right. And also, it's worth mentioning, there was a lot of finger pointing, but there was also a guy in Detroit who was in prison who said that he killed the people in Villisca, but I don't think that he was actually telling the truth on that one. But
I think they had it on point. I think it was that serial killer.
They didn't have enough evidence.
Well, they didn't have any evidence for any of the killings.
Sure,
is the ultimate
He's an organized serial killer.
Right.
So that's his job, is to not leave evidence.
And there was no at the time. There was no concerted way to even suspect serial killing. Like that didn't really exist as a thing that you could come up with a pathology or a methodology. Because one of the things that you really think about, again, in the wake of a crime that got national media attention, to be a part of something where, you know, that is patently one of the things that I think serial killers are oftentimes noted for is their desire to become famous for their action or to, you know, that they're stepping onto a larger stage by doing this.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I feel like just real fast, I feel like I have a theory that he went through towns and where there were houses with axes outside, that's how he.
You got to figure every house had an axe outside.
Right.
You have to figure that was a normal thing. Yeah. But if he was a transient worker, he could easily spy and think, I'll follow these people. You know, I will target that person. I'll target this family.
Yeah. And was the little girl sexually assaulted? Is that what I read?
That's alluding to.
There's a certain illusion of blood on the inside of his eye.
I think
defensive wounds.
Maybe he was a pedo and potentially targeted her.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Because that would go along with working at the house, knowing these girls live in that house, following them to another house. You know, having that kind of, and if we look at the other axe murders, it's like it's all families with children. Sure. We don't know the full extent of anything else, but that does sound like a serial killer to me.
It does.
You know? It
does.
Which I've never actually heard. I don't really know a lot about this case. I've heard of it, of course, but sitting here and talking about it, it's like, oh wow, this is a very fascinating case, especially with the number of weird suspects to bring in,
and still not knowing
with a
anything.
State senator and ending with a incarcerated possible serial killer.
So are they saying it's haunted? Like, is that why the Villisca Axe Murder house is?
I'm sure a lot of people.
Absolutely, I'm sure they offer. Let's take a look at what they offer.
So, the way the town kind of recognizes it, from what I can tell, is that they kind of just honor it as like being a site of a really gruesome crime. Okay. They lean into the true crime side less so than the paranormal.
Okay.
That is not to say that it is not haunted. In its own regard.
I mean, these people were killed in their sleep.
Well, and so it could be in the same facet as the Lizzie Borden house. It's not necessarily that it's haunted by the family. It just sometimes when heinous crimes like that happen, it allows other things to fill that space.
Yep.
Basically.
Also, and this is a weird one, a deep pull. When a person dies in their sleep, they may not realize they're dead. And that is one of the classic conditions of haunting, is a person who does not understand what has happened. if they died so suddenly, if they died so by surprise, then what they are, they're basically trapped in a notion that they're just unconscious, or that they're experiencing something, they're alive, but they cannot figure out what happened. There's something going on in their system that did not trigger the, oh, you're dead, go to the light.
Right.
It's a, what's happening to me? What is wrong? Why can't anybody see me? Why can't anybody hear me? So people who die in their sleep, there is some notion that if you die suddenly without your knowledge, you have a high probability of returning as a ghost.
Absolutely. So, can't necessarily speak on the paranormal side of this.
No, I mean, apparently there of course are countless shows. The Ghost Hunters went, Ghost Adventurers went there. I'm sure there's plenty of footage and things. We did not. I only found out that we were doing this like right before I sat down. So I don't know. I don't have any information as to.
I just didn't find anything like ghostly about it that like seemed solid. Right. Is my point.
But being ground zero for a horrific act that took many lives, you can pretty much imagine
that there's something going on, but I cannot say. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that it's the entire family that's still haunting. The
most haunted house in Iowa.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but it's an interesting. It's disturbing. It's a very
and
disturbing
now it's more
case.
Disturbing because there's all these other axe murders that occurred around the same time, within a year span. That I've never heard of. That I was unaware of a rash of axe murders that occurred at the same time. Because Lizzie Borden rises to the top of the stack, and of course we have the Gribble House here.
That is true.
Around the same period, really.
Right. 1909.
Within that span of time. So it definitely is like axe murdering was a thing. It was and I didn't realize how much of a thing it was. They did it for the TikToks, right?
They axe murders for the
axe murders are trending.
Oh God! All right, well let's wrap that one up and put that away.
Yes, let's do not do that.
Do not do that. But thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. But with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And stay spooky, y'all.